Hey everybody, and welcome to the Fart Fetish Podcast once again. We have a very special episode with a guest today, but I first wanted to do a few quick plugs. The Fart Fetish Podcast is available on almost all major podcast platforms and releases episodes monthly, usually the first Friday of the month. You can also visit fartfetish.info. It's the same site as proctophilia.org. I just thought that name, that URL, would be a little easier to spell, but both URLs will still work and they'll continue to work. The podcast is embedded there. There's some informative resources. I've also added some podcast links of the shows that I've listened to, and I'll talk about those on the next episode. I've also finally put up the link to the Discord. It'll be invite only to avoid any kind of trolls or shenanigans. To request an invite, click the link at fartfetish.info to email me, drop a few lines in your message so I know that you're real and genuinely interested in the subject, and let's just make this Discord a place to discuss, support, and grow together. It's not a Discord for pornography. There's plenty of those already. And that's it. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dill, also known as @StinkyDJ on Twitter. That's StinkyDJ with 3 Ys. He's a fart fetishist from the gay community. In fact, he's also followed the gay community for some time and even written about the online history of the community, which we will discuss today here on the Fart Fetish Podcast. At his request and for his privacy, I've altered his voice for this interview. Welcome, Dill. Thank you for coming on the podcast. We're going to jump right into the history you've kept track of, but first, tell us a little bit about yourself, just to start us off.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So I'm Dill. Most people would probably know me as Dill Gem from this vid and gotten onto Twitter as well recently. So yeah, I'm a fart fetishist. I make videos and I also help to run a couple of Telegram groups for people in our community. So yeah, that's me.
Very nice. And talk to me about the you call it a brief history of the fart community, I think is the title. I have some questions, but why don't you start with like what is it and what's been documented here?
Basically, I just talk about like the history of how this community has developed and like how it progressed from the early days to where we are now, like how there have been different forums online and everything, and how people have started trading videos and all of that, and like all the different kind of aspects that have come about as a result of having more connections, more technological development, and how that's affected the community. I focus more on the gay side of things because like that's the side that I'm more involved in, but I believe there are parallels to the straight side.
How would you say the two sides differ? The gay and straight sides of the fetish? Like, how do those differences play out?
Well, okay, so with the gay side, obviously, it's guys into guys, and it's guys who like farting into guys who like farting kind of thing. Which means, like, the way I see it, it's more of an even playing field in the sense that, like, everyone on that side is offering what the other people want, whereas with the straight side of things, it's not the same, because like I think you mentioned this in the previous episode of the podcast where there just aren't that many straight females that are into this and that like actually into guys farting. So they don't want to see anything. They don't really get anything out of that. So like, say for example, if you had 2 groups, one of just gay guys from the community and one of like straight guys and straight women. With the gay guys, like everyone can give each other what they want. With the straight side, there's more of a power imbalance because like really it's only the females that can give what the guys want. The guys don't want what the other guys are offering, and the females don't want what the guys are offering either. So it's like there's a power imbalance there.
I was just gonna agree and say the only way, and I think we talked about it briefly in our chats, was the only kind of way to in a small way to match that type of exchange that the male side has to give to other males that are straight is the art, is like stories or image captions, videos that are produced by men, but not necessarily starring the men as the farters. If you get my drift, like when I produced videos with my ex, I produced them. They were my whatever, my imagination. I dreamed them up. And she was just sort of the model in the space, doing most of the work. Of course, I'm not saying that, but it wasn't of her. These weren't her ideas. These were from my stories and things like that. But yeah, that seems like the only way on the straight side that having a heavy population of male. And maybe no or very limited amounts of females that, whether they like male farts or like farting on men, even that is probably rare as well. That the women in this space, many of them most likely do it as as another part of their business repertoire.
On that side, it is more of like a business transaction where they're offering a product, and really the only thing that they want from the men is money, whereas we don't really have that. I mean, like, yes, that kind of thing exists on the gay side as well, but like it's not to the same degree.
Absolutely. Well, we do touch on that a little later as well in questions, but I do like it. It's interesting because it is such a. I mean, we even talked about it off, in our chats about, you talked about it as an equivalent exchange, which, can be synonymous with the idea of this video trading that really can only occur in the gay fart fetish space. It can't really occur on the straight side because, as you said, the other men don't really want what the other men are offering, if they're even offering it at all, which usually they're not. I mean, I guess we already talked about how that kind of separates the two sides between the straight and kind of how they don't, like, that's one maybe one kind of tantamount spot where they're not gonna merge because there is such a difference in how the two really approach the fetish. It's almost like two separate fetishes.
It actually is, and like it. As much as I would love for there to be a sort of more of a sense of community, I think that one divide between the gay side and the straight side, like that, because it does make everything a little bit different in the way that they approach the fetish, it does make it very difficult for everyone to kind of come together. I've been in like group chats and stuff where it's like a mix of people, and like it doesn't really work. It just doesn't really work.
No, I definitely could see it. And one thing you mentioned in your history, a lot of the past community in the gay fart fetish community with sites like Male Ass Rippers. Other ones aren't going to come to me off the top of my head. But what would you say like the community was back when those sites were prominent or existed? And how do you say it like differs from today?
Well, I think I specified this in the actual history itself that Male Ass Rippers was a little bit before my time, before I fully got involved in everything. But from everyone that I know who's been involved with it, they talk about it like it was the pinnacle of like having a sense of community, just like everyone being connected, having that sense of like, oh, we're in this together. Like everyone talks about that time like it was the golden age of it, like of this community, of our side at least, the gay side. Yeah, so I think that like there was that to a degree, and even a little bit after Male Ass Rippers ended, it was, there was a sense of like maybe not excitement, but like just togetherness more so than there is today. I think that's one of the kind of negative changes that's come about. I guess one of the good differences of now compared to then is just how big it's gotten and how many more people there are. Like, you've got people from all over the world, and it's just more people kind of like discovering this part of themselves, and yeah, like more people getting involved. But I think, like, it's a double-edged sword, is that the right phrase? Where, like, yeah, it's bigger, but like at the same time, now you've got more of like the kind of people that you don't really want to be involved in this, like the kind of people that are kind of either taking advantage of us or are all all take and no give, or just like people that are creeps. You got a lot of like seedy characters coming in as well, and I think that didn't exist to the same degree as it did in the past.
For sure, for sure. One thing you, well, let me comment on that first. Like, I think that is a big problem. I think it was one of the clips on Ask Ezra's podcast. He mentions how as the leather community grew, it became more difficult to vet people. So the kind of tradition that was kind of taking on a mentor, master slave relationship, and training someone in that way, that's kind of disappeared with the explosion and the popularity of these fetishes, of these kinks, because it's simply become difficult. But one thing I think was interesting about, I noted about your writings on, I think it was Male Last Rippers, it might have been one of the other sites, that it actually had a local like friend finder, which I think is something that also, as the internet started to take more hold, people kind of started to, like, people say they want to connect with people, but we've kind of backed away from the like, hey, let's meet strangers on the internet idea, and kind of more embracing the, we have this world of online friends, and we have our real world friends, and that's the way it's kind of gonna stay. Craigslist and things make things creepy or whatever.
It was male strippers that had that thing. I'm not exactly sure how it worked, but yeah, that's just from what people have told me. I think people still do want to meet in real life. Like, it's the problem again is the fact that you can't exactly be sure who you're getting, and I think that's always been the problem with meeting people online. Like, you can't you can't really figure out who they are straight away, and yeah, so like it makes people hesitant to kind of get into that space. But I know for a fact that a lot of people do want to meet others. They want to engage in this fetish in real life. They they don't just want to keep it online. But like, to be fair, that there are a good number of people that do just want to keep it online, and they don't want to take it past that for whatever reason. And you know what? That's fair. Like, they if that's what they feel, they can do that. But yeah, I still think there are a good number of people that want to take these desires, I guess, and like move them into the real world space.
For sure. Well, I mean, it seems a little out of nowhere, but like, what inspired you to want to keep track of this history? Or why did you think it was important?
So the funny story behind it, I was actually thinking about writing fiction. I was like, okay, let me give that a try. Like, lots of people have done it. There are some stories I enjoy. Maybe I'll give it a try. But then it kind of occurred to me, like, hey, why not try writing non-fiction? um, because no one's really done it before. And I think I explained it in the introduction where uh, I don't have it on me right now, but it's something like, I'm writing this because no one's really done this before, and I feel the need to kind of, you know, keep track of the development of everything for the sake of, like, if more people are kind of discovering this about themselves, they can have like a reference point to see where we've come from and what we've become. And yeah, like, if we are to have a greater sense of community, we need to have like a sense of shared history. And yeah, not everyone knows about, everything that happened back in the day. So yeah, I think it's just useful to kind of have that there as like, oh, okay, so this is how things were, and this is the way they are now.
Absolutely. I think it is a great account. Like I certainly I was there on the straight side. No one has done a history that I know of on the straight fetish side, and there is some overlap for sure. But I really got a sense of the timeline and the history reading your document. You really put a lot of time and effort into it. So it is quite a it is quite a feat.
Well, like it wasn't just me. Like, I talked to other people. I talked to older people that have kind of been involved with this since like, since the internet first became a thing. And I mentioned that that's like, in the beginning days where there'd be like very basic websites, like homemade websites where people would have like farting jokes or things like that, and then people would share stories, and then that's how it all started. Like obviously, I wasn't there in those days. I had to get help from other people to figure out what it was all about. So yeah, it wasn't just me. Like I'm not taking full credit for all of that.
For sure, for sure. Well, I mean that's great, and that, I mean just the fact that you compiled it, you did the work. Credit to you. But absolutely, I'm glad you got help and are are giving deferring to others as well, who were there. So that's great. Someone does have to be the actual scribe of these things. So that is great that you've taken that on.
Yeah, like, and I was thinking, I would like there to be this kind of thing, but there's nothing like it that I know of. So I might as well be the one to make it because, like, it's not really. It was a little bit like a memoir for me in a sense because, like, I've been involved in the community now for a while, more passively, I guess, early on, but then more actively for like 4 years now, which is a fair amount of time to see how things have changed. So yeah, it was just a lot of like thinking back on old memories of, like all the different stages that I went through personally and like, how things changed and like how I saw different aspects of the community pop up online and things like that.
Nice. Very nice. I think too one of the kind of feeling you mentioned. I think of like this isn't this no one else is doing this, so let me do this. I think is what inspired a lot of people, especially in the early days. I'm not now. I think money's the motivation, but I think a lot of people got inspired early on to make stories or other pieces of content, whatever skills they had, because they either didn't see what they wanted or wanted just wanted to do it. I mean, I started writing basically for myself. I wasn't commoditizing anything. I was just basically writing stories I thought were pleasing to myself, and then other people happened to enjoy them as well. We talked about there's kind of a difference in terminology. We had a bit of a back and forth about the idea of like content producer and content buyer versus like terms used in the gay fart fetish community, farter and sniffer. Can you talk to me a bit about that dichotomy and how the terms kind of differ between the two communities?
Yeah, sure. So like, keep in mind that like I'm just one person, and this is my perspective on things. Other people will disagree. So like, Father and Sniffer, they're more like roles, I guess, where you can be one, you can be the other, you can be both of them, and it's just like, what do you enjoy doing from a fetish perspective? Do you enjoy farting? Do you enjoy sniffing? Or do you like doing both? And that's separate from like the producer and consumer role. Maybe I shouldn't call them roles, but it's separate from like the idea of being a producer or being a consumer because like you can be a father without like making any content for yourself. You might just enjoy like doing that to other people without necessarily making videos or making art or making stories or anything like that. But you still enjoy that kind of more dominant aspect of the fetish. you can be a sniffer who, in terms of the fetish, is more passive, but like you can also produce content. Like it's possible to have that. So that, like they're not exactly the same things. In my personal opinion, like I think the whole dichotomy is complete bullshit because uh this is the same with other people I've spoken to, like the whole idea of, oh, I'm just a sniffer. It just comes off as like an excuse to leech off other people's content without giving anything in return. And it's not just me who feels that way, but there are lots of people out there who would identify as just a sniffer, and they just don't want to like make any content for themselves. But they'll happily take it off other people and use that for their enjoyment without giving it anything in return. And no one really likes those people on our side of the community, at least.
For sure. For sure. No, and it makes sense. So I think I'm understanding because there is this, I guess, not necessarily that it's not always monetized, but this slightly more pure economy of video trading that goes on within the gay community, the gay fart fetish community, that there is the farter and sniffer essentially become the not placeholder, the maybe I'll say placeholder, it doesn't matter, are essentially dom and sub. Other words for dom and sub in that way. But the additional, I guess, weight that is carried on the, solely sniffer role is that because they are males who are fully capable of farting, there should be some sort of reciprocal exchange in that they're merely leeching off other people who are willing to, hit record on a camera, essentially.
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And yeah, like you said, like pretty much everyone else that I've spoken to about this, they are just like, well, you're not a sniffer because everyone farts. Like, it's a bodily function. Everyone does it. They might not be great, like they might not be huge, massive, whatever, but like everyone does it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it makes total sense, and yeah, I mean there's some, I mean people definitely were, people definitely leech in terms of straight content, a lot of video sharing and what have you, but it's not quite the same in terms of what you're saying because it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning was the males within the gay fart fetish community are all capable of giving something that all the other males want. Essentially, that's the general idea.
Yeah, and it feels unfair that there are people that can provide something, but they're just choosing not to.
For sure. That kind of plays into the idea of, maybe a little bit. The you mentioned in the history, and we talked about it as fart videos. I think mostly the fart traded videos, but I guess it could be any, whether it be content or fart trading, as sort of a currency within the community, and that's a fairly prevalent idea to do so. Like talk a bit about what that looks like.
It's basically people talking to each other online and sending each other videos. I was first introduced to the concept in, I think it was 2015, 2016. I'm showing my age here. The idea kind of struck me as a little bit weird at the time, but then, like, essentially it's just, I'll send you a video of myself and you'll send me a video of yourself. And that's what trading is. Occasionally, it will be some people have got a bunch of videos saved of other people and they will trade them, but no one likes it when people do that. Like they're essentially stealing, and like stealing is massively looked down upon. It happens a lot, like people pretend to be other people and they'll trade videos as if they are the other person that they're pretending to be. We don't like that. We don't want that. But yeah, so trading is just me sending something, you sending me something back. And that's pretty much it.
For sure. Okay. I mean, and you know, the idea of like as a currency. I mean, since I started joining this vid, when they kind of purged Pornhub of anything that wasn't like an official creator. I noticed that there's people on there who they have videos marked as private, and they will, you know, write in their profile very clearly that they're pretty much only going to accept you as their friend if you have private videos, and many times if you have what they consider good private videos, quality, rarity, desirability, what have you, that you're essentially bringing to this transaction. And that transaction, that, you know, the videos being used as currency is essentially for someone accepting or rejecting your friend request on you know, this vid. I found that pretty interesting. That there is a. I mean, I fully understand it. People are bringing something to the table, so why shouldn't they get something in return? But it's just interesting to see videos used that way, especially, you know, in the straight community. It tends to be content that's, you know, it's stolen, but it's like it's produced content that's stolen. It's not like almost more identity theft stolen.
Yeah. Well, I guess on our side, when that happens, like we know when it's produced content, and we know when it's like, hey, this isn't actually who you're saying it is, or like you're not who you say you are, kind of thing. Because like, you know, I talk about this in the history as well. Like there are lots of content producers that have gotten quite famous within the community, as it is on your side as well. And you know, like sometimes people will pretend to be them, or like they'll have very well-known videos that like just everyone can recognize just by looking at a thumbnail. It's like, oh yep, that's that guy. You know, and these videos will just be like constantly floating around the internet.
Actually, another idea that was interesting to me, you in your written history, is the idea of soft fart porn. Like what is soft fart porn, and how does it differ from what you've dubbed as like true fart porn?
Well, firstly, I'll start off by saying that, like, you know, it's like my definition. Like, I haven't seen these terms used elsewhere before or by anyone else.
Well, then
So,
you're
like,
the pioneer. You get to do whatever you want.
what I called soft fart porn is basically any kind of video where it's not inherently sexual. Like, obviously, the thing with our people is that we find this non-inherently sexual thing to be sexual. So soft fart porn it could just be a video of like, you know, a couple of guys just hanging out, and then, you know, one of them has to fart or something, and they're all fully wearing clothes. There's like nothing at all sexual about the situation, but people will still get sexual gratification out of that because we find it attractive. Like that kind of thing. It's like, it's not porn, but we use it as porn. That's what I would consider to be soft fart porn. Whereas true fart porn is like made with the intention of like, I know there's a group of people out there that enjoy this stuff, and I'm targeting my video towards them. There's like a degree of like, because there are people who make videos for us, but they, you know, there's no nudity involved. There's like they're fully clothed as well, but like we know that the video is made for us, so like it doesn't look like porn at all. So I think there's like a kind of middle ground as well, and then there's like the full on, okay, we're having sex and there's farting involved.
I see. I think that bridges the gap to what I was gonna ask you is like, would you equate soft fart porn, or at least maybe a segment of soft fart porn, to be sort of like, and this is a term I've made up too, so don't feel bad about it, girlfriend experience fart porn that some producers kind of make, these videos where the viewer, or if there's a submissive in the video, they're not really dominated, but they're sort of like in on the enjoyment of a girl farting around them.
I wouldn't say it's the exact same, because like we've got our own equivalent of that where, you know, producers will kind of play that up and like pretend to be the gassy boyfriend or whatever. So yeah, it's not necessarily the same, because like there already is an equivalent to that. It's just changed the woman to a man, basically.
I got you. I got you. So it seems like soft fart porn. Then if I understand it, is a little more organic, or like a whole movie. A guy, grabbing a camera. He's quickly, he's gonna, share a fart or farting a couple times for the boys for laughs.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think, yeah, maybe it doesn't happen as much with women, but like it does happen. Like I've seen videos floating around. I've seen people make like compilations of like female Twitch streamers that happen to fart a lot, kind of thing. Yeah, they probably know that people are getting off to it, but like it's that kind of situation.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, because I didn't think about it when I wrote out these questions, but you're right. I thought, like, there's no real equivalent because women are, pretty much just doing it on content producing or OnlyFans. But you're right. There have been, especially like you say, Twitch compilations of I think it is especially Twitch streamers that, they're streaming for a lot of hours, so they happen to fart, and then these videos get cut and put together for essentially people's enjoyment. Mostly, I think people do it for laughs, but I'm sure, as you say, there is. I'm sure somebody, the wink and the nod towards knowing what is also going on behind the laughter for some people.
Yeah, exactly. And what I find really funny is the people, like the streamers themselves, who aren't aware of it, but then they eventually become aware of it, and especially the ones that react badly. It's like, oh, so I was looking at where all my views are coming from, and like, oh my god, I was disgusted. You people are sick. Like, why are you watching me do this kind of stuff? I'm gonna edit everything out from now on, kind of thing. Like, I've seen that happen with with women as well as with men, and like it's funny. It's funny, but like it also goes to show like how what I was saying before about how there are so many creeps these days. It's like if you see someone who's like obviously not into this, but you know, they fart, whatever, don't go and be all creepy in the comments and be like, oh, you should record more. Oh, oh, that was really good. That, like, just stop. Don't do that. We don't like it. No one likes that.
No, it's very true. I think that happens. I think that happens probably more frequently than it absolutely should. Oh, it shouldn't happen at all. But I think a lot of producers disappear or leave the business, leave or even just people producing videos for fun. I think they just stop because they are essentially approached in a manner that's just not. It's almost inhuman's not the right word, but it's just like out of like, maybe inhuman is the best word. Honestly, it's not. There's lack of humanity in the way these people come out with these comments sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But then also on the other side of things, you get people who are making content just for fun. And I've got a very prominent person in mind here on our side. Then they realize, hey, people are into this. And then they realize, hey, I can make money off these people. And then they start like intentionally gearing their content towards the people that enjoy it. So yeah, it's like it's interesting to see that they're either disgusted and completely stop, or there's a chance that they're like, ooh, I still think you're a bit weird, but like if you enjoy it, I'm gonna get something out of it as well. Like I've seen that happen.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, that kind of ties into something that we chatted about, and is in your history as well, as is kind of the what you write as straight alpha jocks who kind of have come into the space, make and sell fart content for the gay community, and they are sort of akin to the women on the straight fart fetish side, who are making videos, selling videos on I want clips and clips for sale, for straight fetishists. So can you talk a bit about that, the straight alpha jock phenomenon, and how it's perceived and received by the community?
Yeah, I think like they have come about as a result of what I was saying before. It's like, oh hey, I'm doing this thing that is just natural, and hey look, people enjoy it. I'm gonna start making money off those people, and I think the like I say straight alpha jock as a kind of a derogatory kind of term because it seems like they don't always understand like the nuances of what people enjoy, and they're just like, oh, gay people only want to see a certain kind of body type, a certain kind of what's the word, disposition or demeanor or like character. They want someone to be fully aggressive and like, yeah, I'm gonna fart in your face kind of thing. And yeah, they play up that side of things a lot, which is kind of hilarious in a way. Because not everyone wants that. A good number of people do want that, but like not everyone wants that. And they think that just by showing off their muscles or whatever and having like a tiny fart here and there that they'll be able to make money off our community. I personally don't like that they're taking advantage of us, especially the ones like this is not it's not as prominent now as it was maybe a couple of years back. But before it used to be very much like they see us as inferior to them because of this unique interest of ours. But like they'll happily take our money. Whereas now there's more of a sense of like I'm not into this thing that you're into, but I'm happy to make content for you and like I still kind of see you as maybe not an equal, but like I'm not looking down on you. I have a problem with the people that look down on us while still trying to take our money. I also don't like the fact that there are so many of us who are kind of desperate enough to give these people money in the first place. And I mentioned that in the history as well. Like there's this thing of like inflated prices for poor quality content. And people are just willing to pay because I don't know.
Yeah.
But they are.
Yeah, no, I get it. Like I don't know. I'm fairly certain the women who are producing fart videos generally are not into farting as their interest, as their personal interest. I can't say that with certainty, but it seems like a fair bet. I don't think I ever got the sense though that there was like a looking down upon the community. Certainly there's some videos produced that, they will degrade and demean. And, there probably is even low quality content that not necessarily is inflated prices, but definitely the content would be an insult to someone's intelligence. Kind of like using sound effects that are even like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, but even like they're poor quality or just like the content is just, it feels like someone who just doesn't give a shit. And they're just like, let me throw this at these fart fetishists and they'll eat it up. And I think you're right. Unfortunately, there are some that will, but I do hope that the majority of the sales and the accolades go to those who actually put in effort and ideally to those who actually are from the community or have this this fetish or at least feelings toward this fetish within them.
And like that's exactly what I would want as well. And I think with OnlyFans gaining so much popularity in the past couple of years, that's kind of where we're heading. Where I don't like on the gay side, it's very much happening. It's very much a thing where the people that are into it themselves, they'll be the ones making content and selling content. And like, good for them. They're into it. They're doing it. They're making content for us. Like, and if we want to have access to that, then I guess it's fair for them to expect that they receive some kind of compensation. Having said that, I know that there are some people that really don't want any kind of content to be for sale at all, and they think that everything should just be given for free as like almost like a community service kind of thing. That's a kind of minority opinion, I guess. Everyone else is more like, hey, well, if I can make money, why shouldn't I make money?
For sure. And I think we're just unfortunately in that time of life where you start to weigh the options of, like I can do this, I can put the time into doing this, but is it at what cost, at what expense? Like if I can commoditize this in some small way, shouldn't I? And it almost feels like the world is constantly telling you yes, yes, yes. The kind of pure idea of giving something away for free is almost laughable today. You know, it's sadly too. I'm not saying people shouldn't be rewarded for their effort, because I certainly want to be as well. But I think there, when things were young, you know, there was definitely an idea of I'm just a part of the community and I'm doing this for the community. I mean, that's what I did with, like I think I mentioned already, what I did with my stories. I did them for years and didn't try to sell it or make a book out of it or whatever. I did eventually, but for hundreds of stories just put out because, you know, I wanted to do them. I didn't think about like, I'm not making money on this. I didn't care. But as you get older, it starts to become more of an issue.
Yeah, but funnily enough, a lot of the people that are making money off this fetish, you know, that are from the community itself, they're quite young. Like they're in their early 20s and stuff. So I guess that's the time of your life where you're needing money for other reasons. Yeah. And I think this is one of those changes that's like I was talking about changes before. The fact that so many people are kind of only doing this for money now. I I don't see that as a great thing, because I think that creates a bit more divisiveness, and in a sense it kind of, I see it as elevating people to a kind of untouchable status where it's like you're making paid content. That means you're kind of better than everyone else because you think that you think that people should have to pay to watch you, kind of thing. That's just my personal perspective. Like it's weird. I guess I'm holding two opposing viewpoints. It's like, yeah, good for them. Like they can do what they want, but at the same time, it would be nice if you didn't do that.
I mean, I think that is just kind of the kind of contradiction we've kind of reached as a society with things like OnlyFans becoming prominent. You do have, I'm sure, I don't use OnlyFans, but like I'm sure there are women on there who are essentially doing like mundane things. Like why is this sellable content? You know, but it is because we're kind of at that place where there are people who will buy it. There are people who are without it and want that whatever it's experience or whatever. It's almost hard to explain, but like I agree with you that there should be maybe a line to what a content producer actually is. If you're merely grabbing a camera and hitting record, you're sitting on your couch and recording some farts, that's probably not a content producer. That's closer to, I mean, people will sell that, of course, but that's less of a content producer. But I think the where the line gets drawn for me, maybe this is because, my experience in my background in media and acting and what have you. Like for me, it's when there's actual elements there's some forethought put behind this, like whether it be a script, camera angles, some thought to how it's recorded. Are we paying attention to the focus? Are we recording the sound properly? Like that's where the line for me gets drawn to. This is content versus this is home movies, I guess. I guess produced content is a better word. Everything is content technically, but produced content versus kind of the amateur content, I suppose.
Yeah. I think there's even a kind of middle ground as well. For example, there are a few like content creators on the gay side where they like it's amateur. It's still got a kind of like homemade feel to it, but they have worked on scripts. They've worked on creating scenarios, setting up that kind of thing, and it's like it's like just watching a low budget play kind of thing, but like with fetish stuff involved. So it's not like a professional thing, but it's not completely amateur either. But I think it's a what's the word? A spectrum. There's a spectrum of style of content.
I definitely I would agree with that because I would consider mine like while I did pay attention to these things, I still kind of produced a relatively low budget product just because I mean one I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money, but I also liked the aesthetic of this seeming a little more real and grounded. I think when people started getting into I don't want to get into technicals, but like people started getting into 4K as kind of like the norm, like you started seeing productions go higher in value without why are you doing this in 4K? Nobody needs this much definition of farting toward the camera.
Yeah, yeah.
You talked about in your notes to me, you talked about like sub fetishes within eproctophilia. For me, like I look at things like face sitting, and a few other like specifics. Is that like what you're talking about in terms of sub fetishes, or what? How do you see sub fetishes?
I guess the way I would define it is like something. So there's farting itself. Like that's the kind of one banner that we all unite under. But then if there's anything else that needs to, not necessarily needs to, but that you would like to have there on top of that like you're in particular into, then that would be like a sub fetish. And I guess face sitting's an interesting one because there are some people who are into that in itself, but they don't necessarily want to be farted on or anything. So it like that could also be like a cross fetish or or like a side fetish kind of thing. But there are some people that will not enjoy farting unless there's face sitting involved, and that's I guess more like a sub fetish kind of thing. I know a lot of people are into a particular type of clothing. Like lots of people are into jeans. Some people are very into like basketball shorts. What else? I know some people are very into seeing people light their farts on fire. Me personally, that's not my thing, but like that's if that's what you're into, go ahead. Yeah, so it's that kind of stuff. In addition to farting.
So would you say it like when I talked to Damien, the paradigm of him liking clothed farts?
Yeah, I guess. I think that's slightly different in that that's more of a preference in the like it could be a sub fetish where like it has to like the person has to be wearing clothes, otherwise like you just can't get into it, or it could just be like a preference of like, oh, I'd rather just see someone wearing clothes. Or like I said before, it could be, oh, for me to really enjoy it, they have to be wearing this particular thing.
I see. I see. I think I understand the difference because you're right. I was thinking when I originally thought about face sitting, for example, for me, it seems like it should be the category above farting. Like you have face sitting and then farting, but it's true. Some people like farting without face sitting at all. So you can't really say farting is a sub category of face sitting. Maybe for some people, but it really doesn't. It's not a like a be all end all example. That's interesting. You're right because if you just prefer something, it's not necessarily that you have a requirement as it were, like a fetish for it. Whereas me, I think the two are farting and femdom are the two. Like I think I definitely prefer face sitting to be in there, maybe even very close to fetish. It's probably a fetish, but like I could probably do with just the two, but without those two, it's zero. It's
then you really don't get much.
Exactly. It can't just be farting, and it can't just be femdom. Those two have to be together, and then face sitting is great as well. But without those two at the core, I guess it's nothing essentially. So that makes sense. I think I understand that now.
Yeah. Me on the other hand, like just for myself, I'm pretty open in that like I don't have a whole lot of specific requirements for me to enjoy it. I generally prefer closed farts. I seem to be in the minority. Like a lot of people on the gay side, they're just like, take everything off. stretch out your cheeks. I was just like, no, I don't want to see that. Like, that's not my thing.
Yeah, I kind of have that same mentality. Like, it can be okay sometimes, but I'm generally like, nah, underwear's fine. We don't need to get anything beyond that.
Yeah, exactly. That's me. But yeah, but like, to each his own. And like, I think that's one of the, like, in a way, it's kind of nice. It's just like it shows the diversity within our group of people.
For sure, for sure. In the last episode, I think episode 5, I mentioned talking with a male dominant at a local dungeon. He wasn't a fart fetishist, and he was telling me his perception of fart fetishes was. I hope I'm not guessing here, but my presumption was his feeling was somewhat negative, because in his interactions he talked about how the fart fetish was used as kind of a foot in the door to some sort of scat play. You mentioned to me about how greater visibility of more fetishists could help this kind of problem. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I think. Like, I think our fetish is perceived to be as something shameful, or even like relatively shameful, relatively disgusting. And, like, even me, myself, I still have kind of personal hang-ups about that, of like, am I really into this kind of thing? Like, do I want to be into this? And I know people who have that kind of feeling, even more than me. They're like, I think, like, yes, I enjoy it, but I don't like the fact that I enjoy it. I think having more visibility would kind of help to be like, yeah, this, like, it's a thing. Like, this is just a part of the scope of human sexuality, and like it's not something to be ashamed of. It doesn't have to be disgusting. Like, in fact, when you think about it, like, the, farting itself, it's very innocent, and like, it's, objectively speaking, it's less disgusting than like sex, even vanilla sex. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Oh, I absolutely know what you mean. I don't know if other people would agree, but I 100% agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just like, there doesn't have to be any physical contact. There's no like fluids or anything that are exchanged. It's just like air. So yeah. Anyway, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent, but basically, more visibility means less shame, and then people won't have to use like a fetish that's perceived to be less intense or less shameful as a foot in the door to get what they want. And like, it's, I think the same thing applies to scat as well. Like, scat, not my thing. Sorry, I'm not into that. But like, you do you. But like, I think the same thing applies there. If it's like, you need to be upfront about what you like and what you want, and don't kind of. And I guess if it was more accepted, then people would be more willing to be like, yeah, this is what I want. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It totally makes sense. I don't think it's a one-to-one comparison, but I'm thinking of foot fetishism, for instance. I think one of the things, maybe it's my exposure to the film community. The more people became aware of Quentin Tarantino's foot fetishism, the more I feel like people started to accept it, because of his high profile within Hollywood. I think, I mean, I'll like I say, foot fetishism is a little more benign than I guess people would associate with butts and what come out of them, but still, like, I think that you're exactly right. The visibility of a high profile person, or if it could just be done with more people being visible, I think that is the key to what starts to break down these barriers, and allows not even just the public to perceive it better, but also for fetishists to feel less ashamed of something that they should have no shame about. They didn't, nobody. I don't think people chose this. Maybe some people did, but I think for the majority of us, we didn't choose to go down this route, and we're just kind of doing what makes us happy in a way that I think not, for most people doesn't hurt anyone else. The few people that do, screw them. They don't need to be involved. But I think the majority of people just want to practice their fetish in a safe, a sane way with consensual and willing partners.
Yes, exactly. And I was actually having a conversation with another friend in the community recently, and we it kind of got to the point where like I kind of realized, hey, this stuff is pretty much the same thing as just like sexuality in general. Like take homosexuality for example, where it's stigmatized, and people feel ashamed for having their particular inclinations towards the same sex. They can't help it. Like it's just there. But society all around them is telling them, hey, you are an abomination. You are bad. You are just the things that you want to do. It's like morally wrong. It's unethical. It's against the will of God or whatever it is. Like there's all this public perception of like you're being shamed for liking what you like. And I think it's the same with fetishes. It's just like, like I was having this conversation and it was like, wow, it's essentially the same thing. It's just like, we can't help what we like, and if we're doing it, or if we want to practice it within the confines of like a consensual, mutual agreement kind of thing, then like there shouldn't be any shame surrounding it. But I think we're still in that phase of there still is a lot of shame.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You mentioned, in fact, I think it ties in a chat message to me, and I'm quoting here. It's almost like you have to make this kink your whole life, or you have to hide it away. There's no real middle ground, which I think that's a very true statement. But with greater visibility, I think as we talked about, I think we can create that middle, and or at the very least we can empower our own, and we can support our own, which would be a great start. If we can't get any further than that, that would be a great place to at least begin.
Yeah, definitely. And just like adding to what you were saying before, or like quoting me, like just as an example, I know that there are people out there, people that I would consider friends, I guess. They would think the fact that I'm going on your podcast to talk about this kind of stuff, they'd be like, wow, you're taking it too far. And they might even mock me for it. And it's like, wow, you actually went on a show to talk about this? Like, you're taking it too far. This is something that should be hidden away, locked away. Like, don't talk about it. You're like, what are you doing? But then, like, I kind of draw the same parallels to, like, LGBT rights and all of that kind of stuff, where it's like, there were people that had to take it too far in the sense of, like, relative to what was considered appropriate at the time for us to get to the point where we are today in terms of all of that.
I think you made a great point. I think it's unfortunate that you got some pushback. I hope you did get some support as well, because for my side of it, I haven't gotten pushback. I've gotten people saying like, I wouldn't want to be out, but it wasn't necessarily, why are you doing this? So I find it a little, maybe disheartening's a little hard of a word, but the fact that someone's like, don't do that, is almost it's almost actively, it's rather than being defensive, they're actually being offensive in the way like, no, they're trying to stop you from doing something in a way that could help the community.
Well, let me clarify. No one has actually told me to not do it, but I just have a strong feeling, and yes, it's kind of an assumption, but it's an assumption based on what I know of these people, that they would be like, oh, it's not that I shouldn't do this, it's that by doing this, by being on this podcast, that I'm taking things too far. It's like, hey, maybe you should take a step back, and it's like, don't get involved in this world so much. Like, And that's where I guess that perspective of it's all or nothing comes from, and there's no middle ground. There's no middle ground where it's like I can acknowledge this as a part of my sexuality, a part of like what makes me me. It's not all of me, but it is a part of me. Yeah, and I guess it's just about trying to find that middle ground where it's like, hey, you're on a podcast about this stuff. That's all right.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you feel that way, and I still think it's very interesting. Because I guess I get that sense of like, maybe not too far, but like, what's the end goal? You know, like I have an idea or I have thoughts about what the end goal is, but the path to those things are so foggy and hazy that it's really like, are we going in that direction? We just have no idea. And I think the similar to why you wrote the history, I think it's just nobody has been doing this yet, and I think it might be worth seeing what happens when it is done and when people are talking about it. Because I was definitely inspired by looking up, Fart Fetish Podcast on Google and being like, okay, none of these people seem to be approaching this subject with respect. Now, watching some of those podcasts, I actually was surprised, and some of them are good. I'll talk about that in a different episode, but one of them in particular, and they're shared on the fartfetish.info site, is the Two Other People's Lives podcast. One with a fart fetishist, and one with a female poop fetishist. Oddly enough. And both interviews were amazing. Like they didn't they didn't understand these fetishes, but I respected how much they respected their guests, and before and after the guest, and talking to the guest, there was no sense of this is like I'm making fun of this person, I'm better than this person. There was at least one podcast that does do that approach, and I shared that as well as a contrast. But I'm glad there are some that have approached this well, and that was my intention, is to, what if we do this on a community level? What if we have a show monthly? What could build from this? And maybe it's going to be nothing. Maybe it'll be something. We won't know until we go forth and figure it out.
Yeah, and you know what? This could be just you planting that small tiny seed, and maybe you're gonna have to come back in like 20 years to see what comes out of this. You don't know who it is that you're reaching with this. It could have some kind of impact. It could spark something. Maybe they listen to this and they get their own ideas of like how they want to go about doing things, and like you have no idea where it's going to end up in 40 years. Like I said this in the history as well at the end of like, no one knew back in those early days of badly laid out internet websites that we'd be here today. No one saw that coming. So we don't know what the next year even is going to bring, let alone the next 10, 20 years.
Absolutely. That's very true. Perhaps one of the biggest hurdles to that is something that you mentioned in your written history, the kind of fap and go. Like people come to this they don't come into the community necessarily, but they come to the porn essentially, which is in the community, and then they take what they take it, and then they immediately leave. Essentially, they jerk off and go. Do you think there's anything we can do to combat that paradigm, or is it we just have to selectively find the people who actually want more out of a community?
I think it's hard in a space like ours because it's based around a sexual interest, and that just makes things inherently kind of difficult to build a sense of togetherness around that kind of thing. I know there are people that want to have more of a sense of community, and I talk about that in the history as well. But I think there will always be those people that are just like, hey, here's a bunch of stuff that I like. I'm gonna do my thing, and then I'm just gonna leave. Like, you'll always get those people, but you'll also get the people that want to kind of make more connections and want to like explore and meet people and have that feeling of like, hey, we are. It's like, yeah, it's kind of a weird thing to be united by, but like, we are united by this thing, this common interest. As to how to go about finding those people, you know, I've got no idea. I've got no idea.
Well, we talked yesterday about the term kink and fetish becoming kind of a catch-all for the what kind of the mainstream accept as what kink is or what BDSM is, and these are things like, at least in my opinion, things like rope, whips and floggers, gags, sensation play, some, maybe some wax play for some people, and even a bit of foot worship if you kind of extend the definition to like femdoms who kind of like massage. Talk to me about what kind of issues that brings about for kinks like ours that might be seen as on the fringes or extreme. Like who gets to decide what normalcy is within the broader kink community?
Well, once again, I think that's just a problem of representation. If we don't see ourselves represented in any sort of kink space, then we will feel ourselves to be less, inferior, like, or not worthy, or just weird, or just, once again, shameful, disgusting, all of that. Like, we'll start, like that's the kind of feelings that we'll have. And I think when people just associate the idea of kink with just BDSM and all the other stuff that you mentioned as like the mainstream kinks, like it's a kind of very narrow viewpoint of it all, because there's more. There's a lot more than there's a lot more than just our thing as well. Like, we need to be aware that it's such a broad thing, and yeah, I think having more visibility would get more people to be like, okay, sure, these aren't, for lack of a better word, these aren't normal, but like they are, they are all still valid.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I wanted to add something about your point.
Please, yeah.
The whole thing about other people talking about this in a less than respectful way. I think once again that's a problem of visibility. It's like, if other people can go on whatever platform to talk about whatever kind of fetish it is, whether it's fighting or whatever else, if they don't see those people that are into that stuff as people, and it's very easy to dehumanize people. Um, but like if they don't see those people as people, then it's very easy to treat them with disrespect and to treat their interests as kind of like a freakish, out there, weird thing, and to talk about it in a way that mocks them. But like, and I think I messaged you this as well. Like I've met a good number of people into this, and it's like they come from all walks of life, and they come from a whole range of professions. Like, there are scientists, there are lawyers, there are construction workers, there are IT guys, there are social workers, there are teachers. Like, we're all just normal people. We just happen to have this one thing. And I think outsiders need to understand that. And once again, with more visibility, like, we'll head in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We're kind of winding down, and it seems a little backwards, but let me transition to a little bit about yourself in the time we have remaining. Like, what do you? I think you mentioned a few things in your answers, but like, what are you into, and how do you approach this fetish for yourself?
um, in When it comes to the fetish itself, like I said, I'm generally quite open. I generally prefer closed farts. Like, I'm not massively into bare. When I've met up with people to do stuff together, I have done bare farting, like, as the active role and the passive role, the farter and the sniffer, as it were. But in general, I prefer like people wearing clothes and exploring things that way. I enjoy being farted on, like face farting. I enjoy doing it to other people. I enjoy, yeah, like, sometimes I think of myself as being quite vanilla within this kink. Like, there doesn't have to be anything extreme happening for me to enjoy it. And in terms of like going about it. My whole thing from the very beginning, like ever since I started kind of getting more actively involved in the community, it's always been to get to know people as people, like getting to know people beyond just the kink side of things. And like I've made not a couple, I've made a good number of good friends through this, weirdly. Because like I said, I'm all about getting to know people. And if I can see that the other person is the same, then it's like, hey, we can be friends kind of thing. Not everyone is like that. There are some people they'll literally just message me being like, hey, send me videos. You gassy right now. Can you send me a file? That kind of thing. Which is very annoying. And I don't like talking to those people. But yeah.
When you, whether you're the farter in the situation or receiving, do you, what does that look like? I guess, yeah, what does that look like? Is it like a dominating situation that you're receiving or giving, or is it like what? Yeah, how? I'm just having trouble picturing it. What would you like? What kind of things would you say? I guess maybe it would be a way to answer that.
And
if it's too personal, I'm sorry. I'll take it back. But
see, I don't approach this with the whole dom sub dynamic. That just doesn't do it for me. I don't like venturing too far into either role. I'm more of like a give and take. Let's keep things fluid and flexible. It's like at some points I'll be taking the lead, and next the other guy will be taking the lead. Yeah. So I don't get too aggressive in terms of what I say. Really, it's like, what do you enjoy? Like, what do you want me to say? I'll say that.
I got it. Maybe help me compare it to somebody I talked to, who they were mentioning scenarios. I wouldn't even call them scenarios. They talked about like they would be, I'm guessing it was American football, that they would be like a quarterback, and they would like fart on their teammates' hands in that huddle, or in the waiting for the hike, and that's kind of like, it's not really a sexual situation, but later they would go back and fantasize it when they were wanting to masturbate or whatever. So it was almost like a, let's do these farts. Well, he was doing the farts, I guess, by himself, but doing these farts in an everyday situation, and then the sexual thing is almost its own separate thing.
For me, that's for me, if I'm enjoying, like if I'm with someone else that's into it, then it's like, why separate the farting from the pleasure aspect afterwards? I'm just like have them at the same time. So yeah, that kind of thing is not really my thing.
Okay. Oh, okay. Maybe I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm still like off. I think maybe I understand, but like, would you equate it then to more? Sometimes you have like in the straight fetish, maybe you have them in the gay side as well. Videos where the person will essentially be farting for you, but then also like asking you to masturbate at the same time. Would you approach it a little closer to that?
I have done that, but it doesn't always have to be that way. Like literally. Let me try to make this as clear as possible. Like sometimes if it's me and another person, like sometimes it might just be, okay, we meet up, it's like, hey, do you want me to sit on your face while I fart? And be like, yeah, okay, great. We do the thing, I fart a couple of times, and it's like, done. Hey, do you want to swap positions? Yeah, sure, great. We swap positions. He farts a couple of times. Done. Like, it's as simple as that. There doesn't need to be anything on top of that for me to enjoy.
I see. Forgive the term. It sounds a bit transactional, and I know we use that negatively earlier in the podcast, but that's kind of when I see it that way, that's all like I almost see it like going to a hotel room with a girl you just met, and like kind of like the awkward like what do we do, like how do we want to broach this?
Yeah, like, look, it has been like that. I guess I described it in a way that's kind of makes it seem less fun than it is.
I'm sure there's fun. I'm not. I didn't mean to minimize it.
Yeah, like I guess like when I describe it that way, yes, it comes off as transactional, and I guess it is. But yeah, it's just like I enjoy doing it to other people. I enjoy others having it done to me, no matter what kind of form that looks like. There doesn't need to be like I'm not one for having a kind of scenario set up or anything. I do enjoy that. Like if the other person's into it, like, and I can get into that as well. Like I'll happily do like a role play kind of thing, but like that doesn't have to be there. For me, it's a lot more about like the personal connection of like, can I connect with you on a kind of personal, non-fetish kind of level? Can I know you that way? And like a lot of just physical touch as well, like just like a vanilla kind of making out stuff, kissing, all of that. Like if that's involved, and then there's farting on top of that, like that's like perfect for me. Like that'll do it for me.
I see. Okay, I see. I think I see. So that would be kind of your if you had like a go-to fantasy scenario, that would kind of be the two elements you'd like to see.
Yeah, that kind of physical enjoyment of each other with farting added on top. Like I do have other kind of more scene-based fantasies that I like as well, but like I said, like I'm not picky when it comes to this. Like I enjoy a lot of stuff.
That does, I'm sure, make it you can find enjoyment in many places then, which is great, because I mean, like a person like me, I feel limited sometimes in terms of what's produced and how much of it actually aligns with what would actually arouse me. When do you have any idea when and like the origins, why the fantasies or thoughts started for you, why you kind of moved in this direction?
In terms of the fetish itself, like I have been into it since I was very young. And when I say into it, I have memories of like when I was 4 years old and I would just have a weird kind of fascination with it. Obviously I didn't know it was sexual at the time, but like I'd have this kind of strange kind of thought process of like, oh, I wonder what it will be like if that person over there farted. Like, oh, what would that feel like? Oh, that would be something. Like, but like, yeah, it wasn't sexual. Um, this is me at like 4 or 5 years old. I don't know where that came from. I have no idea where it came from. I know a lot of people talk about, oh, they used to have like an older brother or a relative that would fart on them, and that's where it kind of developed. Like I didn't have that, and then with the internet and everything, just growing up, these kind of inclinations, you'd end up like looking for stuff online, then you'd find stuff online, then you'd come across people who seem to be into the same things online, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I enjoy this in a sexual way, and here we are today. So it was like, I guess I was 13, 14 when I was going through, when I kind of discovered that, oh, hey, this is a thing for you. But it wasn't until much later on that I was like, I'll start participating in these communities.
For sure. It's interesting because I too kind of followed the I guess prepubescent path in terms of like, I guess not understanding or knowing it was sexual, but having these even dominating farting fantasies at I don't remember how old I was in second grade, maybe 7 or something. But yeah, I would have these fantasies, and they didn't, I guess it didn't connect to sexuality, or it didn't, click, I suppose, in my head until probably about junior high, when things started to make more sense. When like seventh or eighth grade or so, when things start to get a little more, puberty starts to set in, essentially. I We're about to close out. I want to end on something that we kind of already talked about, but I think it's still a good place to conclude. Is do you think we have the power, the numbers, the will to build a real sense of community here with this fetish? Like, what do you think it's going to take, or how do we do it?
I think we have the numbers. I don't think we have the will, not just yet. But in terms of getting to that point, I think, like you keep saying, like I'm pretty sure you've said this on multiple episodes, it's all about getting more people to speak out, more people to normalize things to a degree, to be like, hey, this is us, we're here. Yeah. So like, really, that's all I can say, because like more people making content like what you're doing, having more visibility, like whatever that looks like, and then I think it would be really good if we could have another. Like even if it starts out as an online space, a space that's just for us, because like I talk about in the history, we've carved out like niche spaces within other communities where people who are into our fetish, like they can gravitate towards them, but we don't have our own space. I think that would be like the next big step, to have like a new fart fetish space. I was going to say a new male ass strippers, but that was just for gay people. I think, yeah, having a space for all fart fetishists.
Yeah. We talked about at the top of how like that might be difficult to merge those, but I do think at least for the sense of support and like a general sense of community, we do need a unified presence. And then if people want to, because here's the thing: if we can just talk, that should be all this space should be for. Like this podcast, the Discord that's related to it, or whatever. Like those things, I think, should be exclusively for discussion. So it shouldn't matter what your orientation is to participate. There is going to be some hesitance. Like I think Damien mentioned the potential of homophobia on gassy erotica form, and I'm sure other forms as well. There's definitely barriers to building that unified community, but I do feel like I feel like it's necessary, and I feel like with things like this, with maybe, as you say, maybe people getting inspired to do other things, other podcasts, whatever, I'm hoping that we will have that, where we can support each other no matter who we are on this side. At least we can unify by the idea that we're just fetishists. We're fart, well, not just, but we are fart fetishists. That's something we have in common.
And like attempts have been made, like so. Well, I think it was 2020, someone tried to make like another kind of forum type of thing for us. It only lasted a few weeks because inevitably there was someone posting videos of minors or something, and the person who created the website didn't want to be associated with that. But like, there is a desire for us to have this common space. We just have to like get to that point and have it managed properly. And that's the other thing. It's like not everyone has the time for that, or the knowledge of how to run that kind of thing. So it's much easier to kind of carve out spaces in other communities rather than having our own thing. Like it's hard, it takes effort, and not everyone's willing to put in that effort.
Yeah, no, some people can't even turn on the camera to record their farts.
Yes, exactly.
But no, I do think that I mean, this was an amazing conversation, and your work with the documenting the history is important. And I think just you coming on, just you doing the history, every part of that, I think will continue to inspire people to move forward and do more. Because I think it's kind of inevitable. Like people are definitely listening to this podcast. I'm assuming mostly fetishists, and I can't imagine many of them will just tune in and do nothing. But and that's fine. I'm not saying they have to do anything. But I think some will get inspired, and some will take their own path into trying to carve out what the same thing you and I are trying to do here, and build this sense of community and build a greater presence in the world. So I mean, I appreciate the work you've done and coming on and having such a great talk with me. I really hope we get to talk again. I mean, I know we'll talk again offline, but hopefully you'll come on again and we'll chat some more.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree. I 100% think that what you're doing is amazing as well. Thank you for having me on. Like, it has been a great conversation. I hope someone gets something out of this. I hope, that our conversation has managed to inspire someone to even do like a tiny thing of maybe instead of hiding this part away from themselves, maybe you'll want to explore it more safely and appropriately. But, that small kind of thing. Yeah, hopefully something good comes out of it. And if you'll have me back, I'm happy to come back for more discussion and talking and whatever.
I love it. Great. Thank you very much, Dill. You can check out the brief history of the Fart Fetish community on fartfetish.info right now.